Avoid these 5 tax mistakes if you're an STR owner.
Hi, I'm Sarah Karakayan.
And I'm Annette Grant.
And together we are Thanks for Visiting.
We've been hosting for well over a decade, welcomed tens of thousands of guests, and earned thousands of 5-star reviews.
Our portfolio continues to bring in over $1.5 million year over year, and supported not only by the industry's leading brands, but also some of the biggest media outlets.
And we're here to help you with your furnished rental.
Taxes for short-term rental host owners is very different than taxes for long-term rental owners.
Making tax mistakes can cost you thousands of dollars in penalties, missed deductions, and IRS headaches. Today, we're breaking down the 5 most common tax mistakes hosts make and how to fix them. And before we proceed here, I have a little disclaimer from our attorney. Disclaimer, we are not CPAs,
Nope.
tax professionals,
Not even close.
or attorneys.
Absolutely not.
This video is based on our experience as STR hosts and research from tax experts, but please always consult a tax professional for advice tailored to your business. So we did enlist the help of our friend Amanda Hahn. She is the managing director at Keystone CPA, who specializes in real estate tax saving strategies. So again, we're going to offer you as much information from our personal experience, but please learn from this and then go see your tax professional.
If you need a tax professional, we went ahead and linked Amanda Hahn's info in the show notes below, so you can go check her out.
Mistake number 1 is misclassifying your rental income.
Okay, so one of the biggest misconceptions that short-term rental hosts make is that their rental income is similar to that of long-term rental income, but that's incorrect. The IRS treats short-term rental income differently than they treat long-term rental income. This is good news for short-term rental hosts because our losses like depreciation, expenses, repair costs, these can offset our W-2s.
If you don't classify your STR income correctly, the IRS may label it as passive income, meaning you can't use those losses against your tax bill unless potentially you have other passive income. Some hosts also assume that they owe a self-employment tax, which can be up to 15.3%, but that is only true if you were to offer other services like daily cleaning, provide meals for your guests,
Things of that nature. The 7-day rule, the key to unlocking tax benefits. All right, so let's dig into this. If your average guest stay is 7 days or less, this means the IRS treats your short-term rental as a business, not as rental income, which means that you could potentially use your STR losses to offset your W-2 income and lower your tax bill. Now, if your average guest stay is 7 days or more, but less than 30, you might still qualify, but you'll have to prove that you're actively involved. More on that in mistake number 2.
We're going to run through some example scenarios with you and who pays and who saves more.
Okay, so let's keep track of this. Host A rents their property for an average of 30 plus days. So like a midterm rental.
All right. Okay, yeah, MTR.
And doesn't actively manage it. They have a property manager.
All right. Very common.
The IRS considers this passive income, right? The investor is not actively involved and the stay is 30 plus days. So they cannot use their losses to lower their W-2 taxes.
Okay. Asterisk, 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 turn.
Right.
Asterisk CPA.
Asterisk CPA. But interesting, right? Because a lot of people are out there talking about midterm rentals, but you got to be careful because if you're an STR host and you like the benefits of these tax breaks, but then you pivot or someone tells you that MTRs are easier, you would no longer be able to leverage that.
This is something that's the popularity rises here. If you are a short-term rental investor who has a co-host, you really want to chat with your CPA about that, because are you actively involved anymore? So there's kind of that co-host caveat too, that again, the more conversations, the more transparency that you can have with your tax accountant, the more it's going to behoove you. So all those little details that sometimes, get just lost in translation. That's why it's important to meet with them several times throughout the year. Instead of just sending over documents in their portal, you want to have these conversations so you explain to them exactly how you're running your property, who's running your property, and what kind of guest you're hosting.
Okay, so now host B rents for an average of 4 nights, so it's less than 7 days. They actively manage their short-term rental, like they're messaging guests. Maybe they're even like cleaning it, like they are ordering all the things. And they meet material participation hours. So they have to participate for a certain amount of time for the IRS to be able to consider them eligible. But they only provide basic lodging. The IRS considers this non-passive, right? They are actively involved, so they can use their STR losses to reduce their W-2 tax bill. This is like the ideal STR scenario if you want the most tax savings.
And this, host B, this scenario is why there are so many people interested in short-term rentals. But again, that's why we're going through these scenarios, because we want to make sure that you're actually falling in that particular scenario. Right. All right, what's up next?
So host C rents for 5 night stays. So again, less than 7 days, but they provide daily cleaning and breakfast. The IRS is going to consider this an active business now, meaning they'll owe self-employment tax on top of their income tax.
Ooh, again, this is something to chat with your CPA, because maybe you are doing the cleaning, but it's not daily. It's just before and after stays. Maybe you do have more of a bed and breakfast type scenario, which I know a lot of hosts are interested in. So make sure to check it out.
All right. So to recap mistake number 1, how to avoid these mistakes, right? Track your average guest length of stay. Because if you're 7 days or less, you can take potentially full advantage of the tax benefits. Also, understand what services you provide. If you go above and beyond basic lodging, like providing meals, everyday cleaning, maybe intense concierge services, you could be eligible to pay more taxes.
Yeah. And last but not least, please work with a CPA who specializes in short-term rental taxes. We mentioned our friend Amanda at the beginning of the video, because you need to make sure that this income is classified correctly and that you are making sure that you are covering yourself with you're getting those tax benefits that you're working so hard for.
Yeah, you could potentially save thousands on your taxes each year if you align everything just so. Mistake number 2, failing to track material participation.
If you actively manage your short-term rental properties instead of hiring a property manager, you may qualify for these tax advantages, but only if you prove material participation.
So hard to say, material participation.
And it might be hard for you to qualify. So what is material participation, Sarah?
Okay, so you have to prove that you're either involved in 500 or more hours in the property, or if you do have some help, you have to still work on it at least 100 hours, and you have to work on it more than your help does. Now, proving material participation is a great strategy to offset the losses against your W-2 income, and this is a great strategy if you're a high income earner on your W-2. This is where it really comes into play. Let's give you an example, okay? You make $100,000 at your W-2. Your short-term rental has $15,000 in expenses. If you qualify for material participation, that is so hard to say, you can reduce your taxable income by that $15,000, reducing it to $85,000.
Potentially reduce it.
Potentially. Talk to your CPA. What you need to do is track the time you spend on your short-term rental. So maybe you have a log, something that you can prove the hours you spent with guest messaging, maintenance, bookkeeping. If you have a full-blown property manager, you likely won't qualify. But if you manage yourself, this could be a great tax saving strategy.
Mistake number 3, ignoring depreciation deductions.
Depreciation is one of the biggest tax benefits for STR hosts, yet many fail to take full advantage of it. So here are the basics. The IRS allows hosts to take a portion of their property's value, a deduction up from it, for every year up to 39 years. Even if your property appreciates, you can still take advantage of this tax benefit. Okay, this is why this matters, because depreciation can be one of the biggest benefits to short-term rental hosts, often leading to tens of thousands of deductions each year. And if you make major upgrades, so from the drywall in, make sure you're tracking this because you might qualify for bonus depreciation, which is even more savings.
Always important to keep track of all of your expenses, but especially when we're talking about this bonus depreciation, make sure anything that you're doing, let's say appliances, flooring, furniture, anything that might be included, you want to make sure that you're tracking that. Of course, you're going to want to let your CPA decide, but this is where you really do want to keep meticulous records.
So work with your CPA to set up a depreciation schedule for your short-term rental. And like Annette said, track everything, even if you're not sure. So when it comes time to decide whether you're eligible for bonus depreciation, you have the receipts, the work, the pictures, all of that you can provide. Mistake number 4, not reporting personal use accurately.
If you, your family, or friends are using the property for personal use, you must record this. And why does it matter? Well, there are IRS rules around this. You cannot use the property for more than 14 days or 10% of the total rental days allowed. And you might, at this point in time, disqualify for those deductions. And why does this matter? Like, just if you kind of just step back and think about it, you can't be double dipping. You're trying to get the write-offs, but then you're trying to use it for all this personal, family, and friends fun. This is going to be a huge red flag if the IRS ever audits you. So this is where it's really important that you want to keep records. And we all, we have a coaching program. We always tell everybody, every month when you're looking at it, obviously you have your rental days, but keep track of the exact days that if you did use the property, that's in there. Because number one, you want to know how many days you were using it and what that potential revenue you lost for your personal usage. But again, make sure to track it, have it in your records that if you are ever audited, you know where you're at. And also talk to your CPA about that. If you are planning, this is before maybe you even purchase or after you purchase, like, hey, this year we're planning on using this property a lot more this summer or this winter. Have that conversation and see what that would do to your tax deductions. Mistake number 5 is you're overlooking those state and local taxes. Many hosts just focus on federal taxes instead of looking at that local, state, and city tax. And this is so important. There are so many short-term rental hosts that are out-of-state investors. Right. So that adds that additional layer. So again, we just want to make sure that you're paying attention to your state and local taxes. And we're going to explain to you what some of those could be.
Yeah, they are the occupancy tax, sales tax, and tourism tax. Now, your area might not have all 3. They might have 2 of the 3, 1 of the 3, whatever. But it is up to you to know. And if you own multiple short-term rentals in different areas, even within the same state, like this could differ. And it's up to you to keep track. So this matters because failing to pay state and local taxes, you can incur penalties and pay fines. And that offsets any of the tax savings that you've done up until this point.
And a common misconception is we hear a lot of hosts think that Airbnb or Vrbo, Booking.com, wherever they're listing, that those platforms are remitting the taxes for them. And sometimes in some areas that's correct, sometimes it isn't, but you are responsible. This is not something where you can throw your hands up and go, I didn't know I was responsible for those particular taxes. Again, disclaimer, this is where you want to chat with your CPA and also a CPA that's familiar with the taxes in that local area.
All right, so here's what you want to do. You want to check your city, county, and state taxes of wherever your short-term rental is located and make sure you understand them. There are tools out there like a company, Avalara. They have My Lodge Tax, which helps you collect and remit taxes appropriately. There's obviously a cost to that service. And last but not least, make sure you're setting this up with your CPA and you fully understand it before you put your short-term rental into service, because getting it all figured out now rather than later will help you save tons of money.
But also, let's face it, some of you might have been up and running for a very long time.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't just slow down to speed up now. Put that call into your CPA. Start fixing these moving forward. Let us know in the comments. Teamwork makes the dream work here. What mistakes have you made that you've remedied? Or are there some mistakes that we missed? Listen, knowledge is power here, and the more that we can help each other out, we want to know. Drop it in the comments.
If you're not completely overwhelmed with all that tax talk and you want to talk about more STR business, you got to check out our video, The Ultimate Guide to Setting Up your STR business right from the start, check out that video. But with that, I am Sarah Karakan.
I'm Annette Grant, and together we are. Thanks for visiting.